What's up, guys? So today's the 17th. What, Nina? What? Come here. Nina needs to be part of the video or something. Just being chatty. Anyway, so today's the 17th of June, 2017, and as I'm trying to catch up on the things that I've said I would do, video-wise, requests and all that. And so the next one that I'm going to do, hi Nino, is I'm going to tackle really quick, and hopefully with quality still, Jupiter going into Scorpio. I'm not going to emphasize a lot on, generational or, major aspect associations, because that's going to take way too long, and I'm just analyzing Jupiter going into the sign of Scorpio. So, mew! So, Jupiter is obviously associated with the mutable sign, Sagittarius, and when not only are we having an elemental clash with Scorpio being the sign that Jupiter will be in, but we're having a modality clash as well. So we've been into the mutable years, and we're going to be having I said I wouldn't get into the transit stuff, but we're going to be having, Saturn go into Capricorn, and then we also have Pluto in Capricorn as well. And then we're going to have Jupiter go into a fixed sign. So it's going to definitely feel like a big screeching halt, like slamming on the brakes, in particular when that alignment does happen, but just to focus on Scorpio with Jupiter. So Scorpio is an all or nothing archetype. It's associated with the underbelly or the essence of things, and it has a lot to do with a higher vibration of Mars, which is motives. And the psychological reasoning, or like the methodical, excuses or, persuasive reasons why somebody does something or somebody acts the way they do. So instead of just acting out on it, you rationalize it. It's rationalizing. So Jupiter itself has to do with higher knowledge and meaning. So it more or less tries to attain to some sort of status of meaning. As with Scorpio, they actually want the truth of the meaning. So as a Sagittarius might aspire to be some sort of, professor, scholar in some sort of subject or whatever, or field. And he wouldn't care per se if there's some sort of discrepancy with some of the information, as long as he feels like he's attained the highest level of knowledge with whatever he's studying. Scorpios, if they were in the same kind of, scenario, if they came across something that seemed not right, or seemed like it was false, or being elusive or deceptive, they would initially just have a huge problem with continuing to be involved in pursuing that, and likely go on a tirade about outing whatever's going on. Not trying to add too much of like a Pallas association into that, because I'm a Plutonian and I have a significant Pallas aspect signature in my chart, but it essentially does still translate that way. So Jupiter, essentially, when it's transiting, so when we're thinking about it going into a different house, and it actually conjuncting with some sort of natal placement, if you're looking at this from your own chart, and or if there's in transit, it's going to be coming up and conjuncting with other planets. That's when Jupiter acts as a magnifying glass, and it'll work in two interesting ways with this. So if it's a magnifying glass associated with Scorpio themes, it could exaggerate or amplify or put a spotlight on Scorpio associated things. So that would be occult subjects, esoteric matters, focusing on disease, psychology, any kind of like sexual things. I know there's like the gender identity thing going on. I think what else? On a mundane, like kind of a financial level, It could be inheritance or some sort of benefits in in some way, with others' resources being distributed to benefit the collective, and or vice versa. Resources of others being dwindled or controlled, because Scorpio being associated with Pluto and that being, the archetype that is emphasized on control, on a lower kind of evolutionary level with the archetype, controlling and being relentless and overpowering is one of the, less evolved associations with Scorpio. So that could also be attributed to that. So the magnifying glass phenomenon, it'll work one or two ways because of the extreme kind of nature of Scorpio. It will either amplify the things that Scorpio is known for and strengthen the interest collectively in occult subjects or paranormal or those sorts of things. Or people will feel like they want to actually dig for deeper meaning with things throughout in their environment, their life, or in general, in society. And maybe that will drive people to kind of look for answers or truth, because truth is very important to Scorpios. Or it will be magnifying all of the things that Scorpio has a problem with in that scenario. And when I'm talking about that would be attributed to looking at a specific house that it's transiting to. So that would be like, if you're a certain sun sign or you're a certain rising sign, you'd have Jupiter going into a certain house. Like, for example, with me, I'm a Gemini rising, so Jupiter will be going into my 6th house, and I actually have Mercury in Scorpio at 0 degrees, so legitimately on at 7 a.m. on the 10th of October, I'm going to be feeling this. This is going to be on Mars Day too. Wow, that's fun. I'm not even going to go there. Yeah, so essentially I'm going to have Jupiter focusing things, not only with my Mercury, but with the Virgo house. That would be day-to-day health things, habitual stuff. So whatever I haven't been doing health-wise or good with habitual behavior or anything because especially, even though I said I wasn't going to try to tie other transits into this, but you know how I get like that. With Neptune being retrograde at that point right there, it could be something that I, like a dirty little secret or something like that has something to do with like my day-to-day or my health that I've been keeping under the rug that might end up being casted some light on. That's possible. So that's how that would translate for that. That's how the magnifying glass either, empowering the theme of Scorpio associations, or Scorpio coming through and being the lie detector and the bullshit caller, and depending on how it's going, depending on the nature of the planet involved, and being actually honest with yourself, or being objective about whatever chart you're looking at, and actually openly admitting, these are the things that I have been doing, these are the things that I haven't been doing. Because it's better for you to out yourself before Scorpio in Jupiter comes and outs you. Because it wants truth, and Jupiter wants meaning and knowledge. And that will be the emphasis with that. Anyway, so that's generally the gist of Scorpio being in Jupiter. So again, just a emphasis or magnified kind of interest or collective acceptance of Scorpio Plutonic associations and themes: sex, death, regeneration, occult, paranormal, really dark stuff, psychology, and then nuclear, psychological warfare, biochemical weapons. That could, I'm not saying that would be an emphasis or something like that, but that could be a problem that manifests as a result of this. And yeah, I mean, that's the general gist of it, I guess. I just keep thinking about the emphasis on the occult because I know for a fact from my personal, I have my personal astrologer that I have consultant from, who said that my big break is supposed to be when Jupiter goes into Scorpio. And that makes sense because my Plutonian signature is like one of the most intense, strongest things in my chart. And I obviously kind of been building my entire practice and my entire perspective, because that's my key planet, on my Plutonian signature. So when Jupiter goes over my Plutonian signature, it would make sense. And so my perspective and my approach and the things that pique my interest or that I focus on study-wise, I would translate that not only because of the symbolism I was just telling you, but from what he told me as well. It makes sense that there's going to be a huge surge in occult interest stuff. And or the thing that I'm interested in is that in my chart personally, I have Neptune in the 8th house. When Saturn went over my 8th house when I was younger, I have been told by family members and people that were around me, because I was too young, that I had significant poltergeist or paranormal encounters and activity where it became a frequent occurrence and I was normal. I was like, comfortable with it. It was normal for me. So with Saturn being the timekeeper and it going through my Saturn return right now, once Saturn goes into Capricorn, which will be in essentially December, Saturn's going to go exactly into the 8th house yet again, where I started to have paranormal phenomenon, or intense, to the point where there were moving objects and stuff. And just from what I've learned thus far, and I'm not even to Saturn being in the 8th house yet, and what I know about paranormal phenomenon in general, when it gets to the level or the point where there can be like moving, like doors swinging open and there being like violent movement of objects, it is way beyond what I'm dealing with right now, which already seems to be intense as it is. But just as my Jupiter in the 12th house is not just hindsight 2020, but like it gives me even more of a heads up, it would make sense that I would catch on to this now, because if, in theory, the thing that I'm dealing with now were to continue on and nobody acknowledged it, nobody took care of it, and that happened, and it started to get to poltergeist levels, it would be way more intense than it is right now, which I'm not concerned about it right at this moment, and I know it's going to get stronger. So, that being said, since I've correlated that, I'm not saying that everybody's going to experience that. It would definitely be somebody who's a Gemini rising, has a high probability, or anybody having Neptune transiting over their 10th house has a high probability of this. So, I'm not saying, like I said, that paranormal encounters or experiences is for sure going to be a guaranteed thing for everyone. But since we are into Neptune and Pisces, which is an emphasis on spiritual, and we also have Pluto in Capricorn, which is its south node, and not even taking into account when Saturn conjuncts that, we just have a lot of different signatures that spell out paranormal encounters or the spiritual plane and the material plane coming at heads with each other in a whole different way. So, yeah. And also, I can attribute Uranus and Pluto, residual kind of influences and themes, to paranormal phenomenon traumatizing people, or people being traumatized by paranormal phenomenon. Right. So, that's the general gist that I'm seeing with Jupiter going into Scorpio. So again, that'll be on the 10th of October 2017 on Tuesday at 7 a.m. And it will be there. Obviously it takes a year for Jupiter to change signs. Okay, so I fast forward it to a year from now. And okay. So let me go ahead a couple weeks then. Days. Alright, so on November 8th of 2018, a Thursday, Jupiter will go into Sagittarius. That's interesting. I'm now noticing this, because I'm saying the actual day of the week. So, Scorpio in ancient associations was attributed to Mars. So Mars Day is Tuesday. So Jupiter, when it went into Scorpio, was on Tuesday, Mars Day, its ancient ruler. And then as Jupiter goes into Sagittarius in 2018, it's going on Thursday. Yep. Fascinating. I have this feeling, I can't say for sure that all the planets do that, but I have this feeling that that's not a coincidence, that that's possibly another formula that I've stumbled onto. And that's why I like to say excessive information, because then I can make associations that I wouldn't have otherwise seen. And when I do things like that, I develop formulas, foolproof formulas, where you count this many numbers and move this planet this many places, and this kind of events will transpire. It's a totally different approach than the memorizing of associations that people associate with, because that's becoming more subjective than it should be, and it's so far from some sort of common ground with occult sciences in general or methodology, that's why astrology is kind of a joke at this point with the modern context, and why all astrologers are kind of all over the board. I know every astrologer is supposed to have their own niche, but having your own associations and just definitions for the planets, signs, points, and aspects and stuff is not the same thing as having your own approach. Okay. You use the same tools. You don't manipulate the tools or bring your own and then claim to be doing the same medium or same thing. Okay. I'm gonna go before they make this a ranty thing. Anyway, so yeah, that's Jupiter in Scorpio. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. If you're curious about how it'll personally affect you, you can contact me for a private consultation, or if you'd like perhaps just a transit forecast event, I can do a transit to natal generated chart for you in a PDF, and I can start it from when this Jupiter cycle starts to the next one, and those ones run for $60. So if you're interested in that, you can hit me up, and hope you guys have a good Saturday.